Pledge of Allegiance. We have some wonderful volunteers tonight. You guys want to come on up? Don't be shy, we don't bite. Say your name, just give the camera a little wave. Tonight we have Katie DeVoe, Mason Brickle, Caden Crampton, Connor Good, Trenton Coleman, Evie Barron, and Elizabeth Bath. Thank you, everybody. All right, thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to turn around and we'll get started when you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So next we have our mission statement, Angela.
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in the global community.
Thank you. And
Sarah is absent with notice. Jessica?
Here.
Kai?
Here.
Chris? Here. Margaret? Here. Sherry? Here. And I am present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next up, we have our approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Right, next up, we have the approval of the consent agenda.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the consent agenda as presented in the attached documentation.
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Tonight we have two of the new hires here with us. Karen Cuckoo, who you recall, she's returning to the child care preschool position at Lee, as well as Courtney Lavish, who will be part of the new GSRP classroom that starts legal officially next week. So welcome. There were no questions regarding the claims encounter previous board minutes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Up next, we have our True Blue moment. And tonight we have the first Lego League here, along with their coach, Miss Crampton, and Miss Sturft, I believe, too. You guys want to come on now? We're the same students here that were here for the pledge as well.
We had our competition a couple weeks ago in November before Thanksgiving. They have to create a robot, and this year's theme was city. So they had to create a robot that would help the city, and they have different challenges that they achieved. One of the teams, the Richmond 1 team, placed 5th out of 22 in the robotics part, and then the other team was 12th out of the 22 teams in the robotics part.
So we did a big job. So they did a really good job.
They did an amazing job. Their presentation on their projects, great feedback from the judges. They really have some great ideas. So they look forward to sharing them with you.
Awesome.
So if you'd like to come on
Right
up,
there.
come on over,
Okay.
they'd like to demonstrate their game for you. Look.
Okay. Next up, we were going to be starting our presentations, and first up, we have the emergency operations plan with Mr. Reinhardt.
Just prior to Mr. Reinhardt beginning, I just want to give the board the preference in your, some background on it, excuse me. In your packet, you'll have some of the laws that were passed last December 2018, what's often called lame duck. And some of these laws took effect beginning in March. Some of them take effect January 1 of 2020. So Mr. Reinhardt is going to talk to you. Number one is the revised school code section 1308B, which talks about the emergency operations plan. One of the laws that was changed was school safety and improvements is no longer a foiable subject. So the content Mr. Reinhardt's going to talk about is in the broadest sense, and what we had to do that our plan contained and how we operate, and then and so forth. So I'll turn it over at this point to Mr. Reinhardt.
Good evening. Like Mr. Walmsley said, this is section 1308B of Act 451. In that mandated section, it says that all school districts must conduct a review of their EOP and in conjunction with the law enforcement agencies within the jurisdiction of the school district. It also says that each district must build an EOP for each of the school buildings. So you'll see 3 separate EOPs built for each one of our school buildings. The reason I'm here tonight is the school board must adopt those EOPs by majority vote at a public meeting, and each school district shall provide notice. You have to provide notice that the EOPs have been completed no later than 30 days, and it must be reported to the Department of Education. All of this fun work must be completed by January 1st. So the state is saying that all EOPs must include the following, like you can see on the screen. I've attached page numbers to show you in each section where we have met through the EOPs that have been created in partner with the Macomb County Emergency Management. So it was school violence and attacks. You'll be able to find those on those pages. So each one of these different topics are included: threats of school violence and attacks, bomb threats, fire, and some of these were included in our previous EOPs but have been updated. Weather-related emergencies, intruders, parent and pupil reunification, threats to a school-sponsored activity or event, mental health training, plans to improve your school building security, an active violence protocol, continuity of operations after an incident, and a risk and vulnerability assessment that we just had completed on November 20th by the Macomb County Emergency Management. That's about all I have from that section. Do you have any questions about this information?
Emergency or weather-related, I'm assuming that's like a tornado?
Tornado, yes.
How often are those updated, annually? Or?
Yes. I believe it's annually or biannually.
In the plan, all the plans had to be reviewed by law enforcement officials. So as Macomb County, we typically do things as a united group with the 21 school districts. So through the school safety subcommittee, which has representatives from all the districts, this plan was tweaked and adjusted to meet, number one, the requirements of the district, but also the districts had the ability to tweak it to make sure it met the requirements of the uniquenesses of the 21 district. Then that plan went to the Macomb County Associations of Police, Sheriff, officials. And I was asked to represent the 21 districts and go there with the Macomb County Emergency Management, as well as Nancy Brule from the MISD, who's the crisis management person at the ISD. And all the police offices, sheriffs, police, have signed off on all of our plans. And it's beneficial because it's a consistent format and process in all 21 districts, as we're dealing with multiple police. Some districts have multiple police agencies that they deal with, so this helps in streamlining that. So in your packet, you'll see a letter from the Macomb County Emergency Management, which talks about that they're leading this, and it was part of a grant from some funding that the state put out a couple of years ago that we were able to get some individuals in the management center who work directly with school districts and so forth. So if there's crisis and so forth, that we can pull resources there to go to work through it. You'll also see what's called the Michigan Electronic Grant System. This is the compliance. So once you guys, as a collective group, have approved the plans, then myself and Tammy will go on and submit this electronically. The plans, obviously, you do have it electronically in front of you, but I'll be removing those just from after the meeting, just because of the FOIA. But in the official minutes of the board, you'll see just the sheets of the cover of where the plans would be. We are in compliance with the new law that will be effective January 1st of 2020, pending your approval.
And with doing this, you were meeting, like, I understand we're doing something so all 21 districts, but I'm assuming that you met with, like, our local fire and police and that to make it unique to Richmond, even though we resemble what the other districts do. Am I saying?
The broad context is that's the next phase is when you start implementing the plan. That's when you actually work directly. From an overview of the plan meets what the law enforcement agencies are looking for.
Okay.
That was done at the county level through their association. So Chief Teschke is a part of that association.
Okay.
So he was given this plan along with every other chief and sheriff in this county. They've looked at the plans and they've signed off and endorsed the plans. Now we'll be working directly with our local officials to say, okay, now if this happens, let's now walk through how we respond and go through those details.
So this just basically puts us in compliance with the law that started. And then from here, we'll figure out what works for us, is what you're saying.
Most of this was already in our previous plan. There were some things that the legislation added last year, like a vulnerability assessment. All schools had to go through that. So the Macomb County Emergency Management was able to do it for our district. And Chris coordinated that, I believe, with all three principals right a week or two before Thanksgiving break. So we've got that now. There's some things in here we've got to put up a plan in for mental health. That's our next phase of this as a collective group to utilize those resources. How do we provide that for our staff?
Is there anything different about the way you do like fire drills, tornado drills that, or is it all?
Some of the
same?
terminology might be a little different, but it's very similar.
We still have to record, they have to, as a collective group between Chris and the principal, they identify the schedule. Some have to be unannounced, some you can announce to staff, correct me if I'm wrong in anything, Chris. And then you have to report those drills to the emergency management office that you've completed them. And is there a report or something that goes along with their narrative, or just says you completed it?
It just says you completed it.
But each of the buildings, they look at, they time how long it took kids to get out of the building. Were there any areas that we might need to look at differently and become more efficient?
Any other question? All right, thank you, Ms. Reinhardt. Up next, we have our student achievement and school improvement updates, and we're starting first with the Lee School, Mr. Koshin.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to review a little bit from what we talked about last time with the presentation. Just looking at this fall's NWA, we talked about the high average and the average, those percentages. What you'll see the next presentation that we do, I'll add the winter. We'll start the winter NWA January 13th. So we'll do the week of the 13th and the week of the 20th. So we'll get updated so we can kind of see how these percentages has changed. So we have the kindergarten reading. Once again, this is just a little bit of a review. This is what we ended last year's presentation with to tie into some of the data that I will be presenting also. Then we have first grade reading, high, average, and average. Second grade reading, third grade reading. Moving on to math, there's our kindergarten. And just a reminder, we started the fall NWEA the second week of school. First grade math. Second grade math. Third grade math. And then for language usage, NWA begins this test at second grade. So we're not missing kindergarten, first grade data. Those students do not take the language. The next data I wanted to show, going back 3 years. So this shows the RIT growth. The blue shaded is the observed growth. And then the diamonds, that's the school norms. NWA takes all the students that take the test, figure out the norms. So the norms are where the students should be. And then the light blue boxes are where the students, what their growth was. So ideally, you want the blue boxes to be at or above the orange diamonds. So this is from fall of 2006 and 2007. So this was showing growth when students took the test in the fall to the fall. So it's full 1 year data. So we have the math, the reading, and the language usage. Moving ahead a year, so this was 2017, 2018. Once again, as a visual, looking at where the blue box goes, if it's at the orange diamond or if it's higher. Ideally, that's where we'd like to be. And then fall 2018, 2019. So once again, this is a full year of growth. So students who took the test in the fall of 2018 and took the test in 2019. Next section that I want to show is the 3-year data. So this is math for all 3 years. So you can see the top right-hand part, it shows the year of the students. So for example, if you look at the very top one, if you look at the first grade, those students go down to the 2017-18, those would be the second grade students. And then drop down one more graph, the last one is third grade. So kind of see where they're at with their growth. So this also takes into account, since it's 1 year of data, takes into account the summertime. And the RIT growth, when the student takes the NWA and they get their score, the fancy name for the score is the RIT score. Once again, looking at the 3-year data again, this is for reading. So top graph is 2016, 2017. Next graph is 2017, 2018, and then the bottom graph is 2018, 2019.
So then it's going down in the third grade?
Yes.
Right.
When you look at NWA in general, as the students get older, their expected amount of growth is smaller. Always kind of think kindergarten students are like sponges, they're just taking everything in because they're really learning for the first time. And then when they get to be 4th grade, 5th grade, middle school, high school, their amount of growth is going to be much less.
Didn't you say we wanted the blue to be higher than the diamond?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, well, the blue's not higher than the diamond.
No.
In 17, 18 for reading, so I guess I'm missing their sponges, but when they get to 3rd grade, they're not there, it's less, so how does that work?
So as you look at the whole year, students are taking these, this is their test in the fall. So you look at when they're taking summer time off, coming back and taking the test. So let's look at when they take the test, beginning of 2nd grade to beginning of 3rd grade. That shows where their growth should be and they're not quite at the growth. And I'll address that a little bit when we get to the school improvement plan, what our goals are and some of the things that we're doing to address when we look at when we're not where we need to be. And then language, since they take the test for the first time in 2nd grade, it shows up in 3rd grade because it's when they take it the fall of their 2nd grade year, it's the fall of their 3rd grade year. So that's why there's any 2nd grade data, because 1st grade doesn't take language. So when we look at this data, and this is part of our grade level professional development that we do, looking at NWA, looking at the scores, but when we dig a little bit deeper, looking into the specific areas where students aren't achieving the growth that we want them to. So one of our school improvement goals is that students at Willow Lee will become proficient readers. So we do student data analysis now in their grade level meetings. Teachers do that in their own time during the prep, especially when they're beginning, looking at their guided reading groups. When we look at our interventions and students move from different classrooms for interventions. Last year we talked a lot about the pre-K through 12 frameworks and indicators. This supports our balanced literacy, and this is the work that we did with the literacy coaches from the ISD all last year. Grade level, something they're working on at each grade, is the writing curriculum. When we went through all of our professional development last year, it came out that teachers felt one of the weaknesses of the curriculum was the writing curriculum. So we developed and purchased some new writing curriculum to supplement what we currently have. So it's something that's in place this year that teachers are using. They receive additional professional development at the beginning of the school year in those August dates where they work as a team, getting all the items in order for that. Just working on mentor text as part of the writing curriculum, incorporating certain writing, so informational writing, books that are used as they're doing the writing curriculum, and always focusing on the balanced literacy. Guided reading, independent reading, read alouds, interactive writing, some of those things that are part of balanced literacy. New this year, second grade literacy cohort. Second grade team and myself, we've been at the ISD for 4 days so far this year. We're going again Wednesday and then one next week to finish up our 6 days. We're working specifically on each part of the balanced literacy specific to second grade. One nice thing with the second grade literacy is as we're gathering the information, getting resources, I'm able to bring that back, and the second grade teacher bring it back, and we do some presentations and give some of those resources to kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers, and third grade teachers. Next year's my understanding will be first grade will be doing the literacy cohort next year, and then kindergarten. So that's a ISD initiative, something that Coleman Intermediate School District has developed. Everything working with supporting that balanced literacy and classroom instruction that works. All staff members in the district are provided with professional development on those teaching strategies. And this year, I think elementary, we had 5 or 6 teachers attend that training this year.
I ask the question every year,
Yep.
but your classroom instruction that works, your new staff have attended?
Yep, as soon as the ISD offers it, we get them in the earliest class as possible.
There's 2 groups that went. There's one that went in the fall, and I believe there's one that's going second January time. I think there's some at the high school that by the end of the year, they will have gone through all the new stuff.
And then one of our other goals is that all students at Willow Lee Elementary will become proficient writers. So you see a lot of the same things that we do for writing and reading as we look at the data analysis, the frameworks and the indicators, grade level, the same things they're working on as the reading and the writing supplement and support each other. Second grade literacy cohort, it does have a lot of writing in there also, different strategies, different things to support that balanced literacy. And then once again, classroom instruction that works. Then all students at Willow Lee Elementary School will improve their math proficiency. So along with their student data analysis, something we sent teachers to was number talks. It's a way to teach math that supports the 8 standards for mathematic practices. This year we sent 1 teacher from each grade level. So we had a representative from kindergarten, first, second, third, went to the 2-day training. They came back and presented at a staff meeting, and the staff was so energetic and wanted so much more information about it that we continue that at our grade level PDs. And I'm currently working on trying to get the ISD to come to the elementary to train the whole staff. So they're all using the same language. I have my fingers crossed for January 20th because we have a full day of PD, but the ISD said they're not available that day. So I'm looking for possibly sometime in August when we have some of that time. So I'm on penciled in their calendars. So we'll get that training going in August for every staff member. One thing that was really impressive is that we have some, the teachers that went to already, they were teacher leaders. They presented at staff meeting. They're showing the staff how to do things. And we've had teachers going to other teachers' classrooms to see how number talks works, and teachers going to other teachers' classrooms to teach another class so the teacher can see firsthand how it works. So it's very powerful and very impactful practice that we're working on. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next, we have the middle school with Mr. Bartez.
Good evening. The presentation here that Mr. Bergmeyer and I worked on, I did make a couple tweaks to it to make it more easier to read. And I'll go over that when we go over the sections here in a second. And Mr. Walmsley, at the end, I have a student video. And after the happy song plays, which isn't the important part, when the student talks, if you could turn
up.
Yeah, if we did it now, it would blow us out of here.
Okay.
Something that our Mrs. Campos class was working on with the editing and stuff. But other than that, it's pretty impressive what her kids did here. So, okay. Fall NWA achievement, year to year. I'm going to go over what they have done. We started this test in 2014. Those of you that have been around for a while know that I'm very passionate about that. And I have a cohort comparison here, as well as our school improvement update, or what we're focusing on, and then wrap it up with our professional development focus as a building. So, first thing. Our year-to-year fall data, we look at the NWA data. We look for trends with the class of kids that move up through the system. Not only like 5th to 6th, 6th to 7th, but we also look at all of 4th, all of 5th to see if there's anything in particular that we're missing in our curriculum. Was there a summer slide? Mr. Koshin talked about that a little bit. Are there curricular areas I was just mentioning that need to be studied vertically? You know, 4th to 5th, 5th to 6th, 7th to 8th. This year, added bonus, having 4th grade teachers and lead teachers over to share their expertise of where kids could and should be added in 3rd and 4th. And then I put there, it's a goal, Mr. Koshin and Mr. Cass and I have talked. We would love our 3rd and 4th grade teachers to get together in our 8th and 9th. It is a goal, it's just tougher to do, but it is on our radar. Are there curricular areas that need to be studied horizontally? That would be within the same grade. Teacher to teacher, same grade level of content. We have some teachers that are our only teacher in grade, so it's easy to look at the curricular area of need, but we have several subjects where we have teachers sharing, and it's important for them to get together and discuss, and we make it a priority. Are there achievement gaps within groups of students? I mentioned a few minutes ago, entire classes, the class of 2024, the class of 2022, are there gaps, and in particular, subgroups that we look at? What are their gap trends? Goal setting, we do a lot of goal setting from our teachers using NWA to our students, and then our building uses NWA for those 3. Now, this goes all the way back to 2014. You've seen this before. If you go horizontally straight across, that first one there is 4th grade. So you got math in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. That would be your fall year-over-year trend. And if you go diagonally, it's your cohort trend. So the same group of kids as 4th graders, and then in 5th grade in the fall, and then in 6th grade in the fall. And then what we've done is we've looked at the gap with where they're behind or ahead of the national norm, and then the cohort gap trend. As we go diagonally, we want that to become more and more positive as the axis. And on the bottom there, we have 6 years of 8th grade NWA fall data. And then we broke it up. This is strictly math. It's that same chart that was just up there, but this is everything taken out of it except for math. Again, horizontal is our year over year, different group of kids at the same grade level, and diagonal is our cohort chart. So this is that math, that previous chart that I just showed you. The vertical straight line is the national norm where we want to be, and then you can see in the key, like 4th grade RMS, that's all of 4th grade, and it goes from right to left, 2014 to 2019. So 2014, you know, they were underneath quite a bit. Now this year, different group of kids, but 2019, we're closer to that target. So for all the grades, 4th through 8th, the last 6 years, that shows where our kids have been in the grade level, which is important information, but more important information is this, which is fall to fall again, but this is cohort data. How are they in 5th, 6th, 7th? So the blue line, 225.7, is vertically they're 201.3, 1 point, that's this year's 4th grade. 214.2, 218.2, 218.2, and then 225.7. That vertical, that is this year, 4th through 8th grade. And then if you go backwards from 15 to 19, that's how many years of data we have. So 2019, 225.7 is 8th grade. In 7th grade, they were 221.8. In 6th, they were 211.1. So this is a cohort, same group of kids from left to right. Vertically, it's same class, the same grade level. I'm sorry, horizontally. Okay? Now this is reading, same thing, taken it from that first chart. So reading straight across, your 195, 199, 190.1, 2017, 196. So your horizontal line, they're in 4th grade. That is different classes of kids. Diagonally again is that same group progressing through the middle school. And again, as we go diagonally, we want the numbers to become positive. We want them to be above that norm. This is reading again, similar to math. Your horizontal straight line is your norm, which haven't changed. And that's another reason why we like the NWA is because it's consistent over time. They don't change the target on us, so we know if we're improving in comparison. So again, 2014 is the far right to present 2019. That is different classes, but same grade level. You can see where here's where we're before, above, before, above. This is the reading cohort. Again, that 195.7, that 1 year over there, that is 4th grade this year. 207 to 200.8, that's current 6, or I'm sorry, current 5. The gray is 6, the orange is 7, and the blue again is 8. So 8th graders, 217.9, 215.8, 209.4, 204.1, 199.1. That has been their growth curve from fall to fall. And we do have a dip. So we start out the fall usually below where we ended the spring. So our gain in what we look at in the spring, and I have those charts too, except for this year's obviously, the gain is quite impressive. So here is language usage, our last test. Again, horizontally, same class, like 8th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade. And then diagonally is the same group of kids as they progress through testing. And then lastly, this is that trend for language usage. 2014, the The first year we did this, Lee didn't do it. And then from every year after 2014, they did. So we have those data points again, comparing different classes and kids, but in the same grade level at the time. This is the cohort for language usage. Interesting to note their little competition at our 5th grade this fall has outperformed our 6th grade. 206.6 and 207.5. But these are the ones that are a little different in your PowerPoint. This is much easier to read than what I had on it.
Looked at it over, and looked at it Friday and said, this is much better, so I'll get that.
Okay, school improvement update. Our CNA, our comprehensive needs assessment, with Title I being new to the building, we have a lot of work to do with data. What type of data do we need? How are we going to gather the data, and how are we going to organize that data? How are we going to report the data? Before we get to advisory there, what data do we need? We need 4 pieces of data, or 4 areas that we need to look at. We've broken up the school improvement team. We need to look at demographic data. We need to look at student achievement data. We need to look at our processes, the processes that we run in the middle school. And then lastly, our perception data. So those 4 data points is what we need. We're going to gather it and organize it, gather it through programming and surveys and PowerSchool, and organize spreadsheets. And we're going to do most of this electronically, so it's easier to share and house, save paper. And how are we going to report the data? We're going to report several things. Our Title I report that we have to do, our school improvement report. We'll report out on our comprehensive needs, and then our AER, our annual education report. We'll have information on how our CNA looks. Advisory, our school improvement takes the lead on our advisory. That's every Tuesday, the last 30, 40 minutes of the class. We do a lot of different things in advisory. The 4 core each take a month, and they come up with lessons to be taught. For example, math will take and emphasize the PSAT or the M-STEP, depending on the grade level. They'll differentiate to that level, and then hand the stuff out to the teachers. Social studies will work on units, ELA, so on and so forth. Advisory, we also use to educate the whole child. Perseverance, grit, anti-bullying, different programs like that are taught during advisory. And we also use it for retake time, for students to retake tests. Student data, we look at a lot of that. Every meeting we have, we focus on professional development, what we teach, solid standards and understanding. Standard spreadsheet with I can statements, we'll go over that in a second. How we teach, what are the best practices, CITW strategies and literacy strategies, data analysis, teacher and student. I wanted to show you what Ms. Bertmeyer and I talked about this, and he goes down to the ISD for the unified classroom and getting that up and going with PowerSchool. And I think I mentioned this last time, and how impressed they were telling Mr. Bertmeyer how impressed they are with our teachers with what they're doing. And when I go down and talk to principals, same thing, picking our brain about our standard-based grading. These charts will show you specifically how much work and dedication that our teachers have done. Mr. Bertmeyer and I can't applaud them enough. So if you look at this sheet right here, you have your grade 5 mathematics. This is just one example. Number and operations, base 10. Measurement and data, geometry, number and operation fractions. So I had to do it on 2 sheets. So the last one down here is operations and algebraic thinking. So you have number, base 10 is the first one, and then these 4. So those are the 5 main components of 5th grade math. Now I'm going to go backwards. If you look at the first one there, MBT, number and operations base 10. So you have 1 through 7 standards, but 3 has 2 sections, an A and a B plus 3. So there's 9 standards right there in base operation alone. So what our teachers have done, is break them down. So the first standard under number and operations base 10, NBT.1, they have written all those I can statements. So they broke that standard down into 9 substandards. And we've been doing this for a couple of years now, looking at the end, looking at what we wanted to do and how are we going to assess it at the end, and then work towards how we're going to instruct it. So what do we want our students to show? They'll be able to do. What can they do to show that they understand those I can statements for that standard? And then they come up with their assessments and then their lesson plans and their instructional strategies to deliver that instruction. So that's one, and then there's NBT2, NBT3A, there's 3A continued, 3B, 4, 5, 6, and then there's 7. So of that one main focus of math, number and base 10, the 9 standards, there's easily 40 things that our teachers need to assess and break down to make sure they understand the entirety of that standard. And that takes a lot of work, and again, we applaud them every day. Teachers can't be the only ones looking at data and breaking down data, so each year we do have students fill out and work on keeping track of their own data, doing their own data analysis. This year, during one of our content area meetings, they talked to me into making this a little more middle school friendly and younger. That's why the emojis are there. Great idea. You have to give the teachers credit for that. And this we tweak. 4th grade is less intense. 5th grade is a little more per the grade level, with the upper elementary and then the 6th through 8 traditional middle school. This has PSAT goal setting, so this would be an 8th grade one for reading, but our students will do reading and mathematics and language usage, which is more of a writing. This is the back of it with RIT goal and the understanding comparison of M-STEP and PSAT, because M-STEP is the results they would get. Each student gets a copy of their NWA test printout, their profile, as well as their M-STEP to fill this out with teacher guidance. It started in advisory, and then it ends with their content area teacher. And then we ask the parents, to sign it and turn it in, and we hold them, and then we look at them later, pass it back out, and see how they did. Teachers, when they get their NWA data, they do this. This is math. So every hour that they have kids in front of them, they break it down by their mean RIT, average RIT score, number of high students, number of low students. So they know where their gaps are. Their high flyers, where they have to differentiate, and their low flyers in each classroom, with the 4 main subcategories there for the NWA, which are very closely related to M-STEP, and the core curriculum that they break down. And then on the back, this is all the questions that Anthony and I ask, and then we meet with them to go over how are they, what's the difference with your colleagues, what are you sharing together, and how are we addressing issues, both high scorers and low scorers. Lastly, professional development, school-wide content area writing. When we break down our scores, writing is an issue, something that we need to get better at. And so we push it in all our content area writing, and we come up with rubrics so everyone understands the basics. Because as a former math teacher, I would have wanted guidance from my ELA teachers on what to look for in a rubric, so that I can help the students with ELA, but I can have them do a content paper in the mathematics curriculum. Unified classroom, Mr. Berkmeyer is really taking the lead on this, as well with Mrs. Jar. This is an excellent site for us to create assessments immediately tied to the standard. It is MSTEP type questions, computer adaptive, computer, you got to manipulate the computer, and it gives you instant feedback. It's fantastic. If you guys remember Data Director, this has replaced the Scantron sheets, and it's pretty powerful. Advisory lessons, we went over those. We talked about to maximize our time. Standard alignment, as you saw, the ICANN statements, our goal is to have those sheets in every student's hands next year so they can understand what is exactly under each standard. Assessment, I mean, we wanted, they're getting it this year, but we wanted to have it at the beginning of the year. Right now, we're doing it as we go, but next year we wanted to have it right at the beginning with a data folder, and we'll keep those in the classrooms. Assessment proficiency rubrics so that we can agree on some norms on what proficiency looks like. MSTEP and PSAT breakdown, and then here's our student video. Now, this was a project for Mrs. Campo, National Junior Honor Society student, and student government wanted to talk about the importance of data. So this young lady, I'm not putting any pressure on her because she won't be here for a few years, but I can see her sitting in your seat someday. Fantastic, bubbly personality. So let's see here.
Happy so?
Yeah.
The NWA Take It Up a Level Board. So this is going to track our progress on NWA throughout the year. Let's go see how 4th grade is doing this year. Hey guys! So here we are at 4th grade. So in math, we got a 201 instead of a 202. So close, guys. In winter, I know we can get a 209. We work hard. So in reading, they got a 196, but came up a little short because they're 198 gold. If you guys work hard this year, I know you can get a 204 in the winter. So in language usage, we got a 201 over a 199. That is really good, guys. Keep it up, and I know you can get a 204 in the winter. Alright, let's go see how 5th grade's doing. Okay, guys, here we are at 5th grade. So in math, we got a 211 when we were supposed to get 211. That's great, guys. I know we can match the 217 in the winter. So in reading, we got a 207 instead of a 206. 1 point up. That's amazing. In winter, I know you guys can get the 210. So in language usage, we had 208 instead of a 206. 2 points above. I mean, that's amazing, guys. I know you can get 2 more points and get 210 in the fall. Okay, let's see if 6th grade's doing as well as 4th and 5th grade. Okay, guys, here we are in 6th grade. So in math, we got a 214 instead of a 217. So close, guys. I know you guys can work hard and get 222 in the winter. So in reading in the fall, we got a 209 instead of a 211. Super close, guys, about 2 points up. In the winter, we can get a 214, I know it. Okay, and language usage, we got a 209, but came up short with a 211. Again, 2 points up. I know we can get the 214 in the winter. Let's go see how 7th grade's doing. Okay, here we are at 7th grade. So in math, we got a 218 instead of a 223. Super close, guys. We gotta work super hard to get a 226 next test. So in reading, we got a 211 instead of a 214. Came up 3 points short. So in the winter, you're gonna have to get a 217. So you gotta keep working hard, guys. In language usage, we got a 211 instead of a 214. In the winter, you're gonna have to work super hard to get that 217. Okay, let's go see how 8th grade's doing. Hey guys, so in math, we got a 226 and a 226. I mean, that's amazing. So we met our standard. In winter, I know we can get the 229 again. So in reading, we got a 218 instead of 217. 1 point above. That's amazing, guys. I know we can get the 219 in the winter. So in language usage, we got 217 over a 216. I know that next test in the winter, we can get 2 points above instead of just 1. So let's work hard to get a 220 instead of a 218. But 218 is great too. Alright, now let's explain about the NWA board. So, hey guys, so here I'm going to explain about the NWA spirit points. So if you get a 211, and you're supposed to get a 211, like 5th grade did, and it matches up perfectly, you get 1 spirit point. But like in language usage and reading, they went above and beyond, and they got more than they were expected to. That gives them 2 spirit points. So if you want to win this year for spirit points, work hard on your NWA and spirit days. Okay, bye for now.
So Grant Elderson and David Jackson did that for multiple purposes. That wraps up our update. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take those. One thing I noticed here, that anything within 5 points is close.
Yes.
She has great energy.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
So, and then that's up in our cafeteria, so we're going to keep that up all year, just as a little motivator. So. All right, thank you.
Up next, we have the high school with Mr. Castle.
I'm not going to jump up here, so I know what you're expecting.
You can sing.
You don't want that. Kind of feel like I'm coming up and giving a physics lecture after Dr. Stephen Hawkins here. So in the high school, where we left off in the fall, we spent a lot of time looking at our PSAT and our SAT in the fall and celebrating all the things the high school had accomplished there. So we looked at the following concerns and questions at Richmond High School. So the first one was we wanted to see how can we keep all this forward momentum going, because obviously we enjoyed great success last spring, moving into the fall. So the first question was, how are we going to keep the forward momentum going? We also looked at examining trends, deciding where and how to allocate our resources, because we all know that our resources, our time, our money, and our energy is a valuable resource, all valuable resources, and we want to make sure that we're spending them appropriately. We looked at professional development time and make sure we're dedicated to breaking down the test and the tests and developing resources to move forward, as well as the NWA fall data, and I think they call it the summer slide. We're calling it the brain drain at RHS to see if Richmond High School fell victim to the same things that other schools fall victim to, as our students kind of slide backwards to taking those steps back in the summertime. So how do we keep the momentum going, part 2? It was with the student spring testing data being celebrated. So we wanted to make sure it wasn't kept a secret that our students performed awesome on the tests last spring. So we put it in the newsletters, we gave out prizes, we gave out free yearbooks, we gave out free homecoming tickets, we gave out free prom tickets, and celebrated our students, as well as a lot of personal congratulations. We bring our students in, well, Ms. Sleepak and myself and Ms. Borwick have brought in our students who either performed well or made huge increases in their scores from the year before, and just had those one-on-one handshake conversations of like, your effort and your performance did not go unnoticed. And for a lot of kids, that goes a long ways, because they don't want to be put out in the public eye, they kind of get that shy embarrassment, but the one-on-one they really do appreciate. One of the other things that we're doing is administrator and student visits to our SAT prep courses. So in the high school, we have an SAT prep math and an SAT prep English, and I made it a point to make sure that we're in those classrooms and kind of stressing the importance of these classes, what they can do for them and their scores. And one of the big things we did is we brought in some seniors who took the courses last year, because I could talk to them blue in the face, they may not listen, but as soon as some of their fellow students come in and tell them that this really helped, hey, my score jumped 60 points based on this, hey, listen to Mrs. Van Hand, listen to Mr. Ogilvy, they're going to give you these tips and tricks. That really helped some of the students, and there was more buy-in from the students, the peer-to-peer conversations. We also invested in some SAT reading and grammar prep books for use in Mr. Ogilvy's classroom, so he's getting it in there. He says that since he's been implementing these, he's seen huge increases in the scores. So money well spent. One of the other cool things we did to celebrate our students is we had a college application week celebration. We brought the freshman class in too, which in the past when we've done these, we've only celebrated the seniors that applied. But one of the things that we wanted to do in the high school is continue to build that sense of collaboration, family, and also get the freshmen excited about getting into colleges. Because at 14, they're probably not thinking about where they want to go to college.
So when we brought them in there, Lexi was in there. It was kind of a cool event that we put the freshmen off to one side. We included them into some of the games, some of the prizes, and they really got to see some of their brothers and sisters, in some cases cousins, and some of the people that they look up to applying to certain colleges. So hopefully those kind of things got stuck into their head. We also did something cool. We had the seniors share their experiences and advice with the freshmen. Because again, Ms. Borwick and I and some of the teachers here, we can talk all day long, and they're not going to listen to us. Hopefully they are. But we had a panel of about 10 to 12 seniors get up. That's a picture of it. It's kind of hard to see. They got up in front of the auditorium and they shared their experiences. These weren't only our high achievers. These were some of the kids that have had some struggles through their high school career. And credit to them, they got up and they spoke about, these are some of the issues I had. Here's some of the mistakes that I made. Please don't make these mistakes. Here's where you can, here's where you can change. And I think the message was universally accepted to them that the end's coming real quick. It seems like it's a long ways off, but before you know it, you're going to be applying for colleges. Please don't make these mistakes. Yes, your freshman year counts. Please don't wait. Get started. And so that was one of the cool things we had when we got up there. We had college-bound students. We had some that were going to the military speak, as well as some that were getting into the trade. So we really tried to get across the board there for our students. In examining our trends, administrators, counselors, and teaching staff have dedicated our department time to examining the student achievement, looking at gaps in instruction, and seeing if there's something that we're missing year after year. So we're pulling apart the PSAT and SAT, and if we're constantly missing the same questions or the same area year after year, we're changing, we're tweaking our instruction. Looking at the strengths and weaknesses of our individual classes, really breaking down the PSAT 8 data, which we have now. Thank you, Mr. Bartels. You guys got me the PSAT 8 data. We've been looking at that and trying to implement the changes to our freshman class this year and making sure that we fill those gaps moving forward. We don't want to wait until their freshman year is over, because then we've essentially lost an entire year and a chance to fix that. The fall PSAT NMSQT alphabet soup, that data has just been released, so we just got this in last week. We had 32 11th graders take this and 10 10th graders take this test, which is very similar to what they're going to take as an SAT in the junior year. So not only are they taking it and getting the experience, but we spent a little bit of time at our staff meeting today breaking down that data and seeing where they're going. Positive trends. We again had a handful, about a half dozen students score in the 90th percentile or above, which is in that elite area. So good things coming down the pipe. Some of our PD that we're spending time on, we're really looking at analyzing the standardized testing data, and this is the PSAT, SAT, work keys, and NWA. We got a lot of tests here in the high school. We're really trying to hypothesize and inquire as to the causation. So what is causing these? Because we can look all day long at what the data says, and that's great, but unless we know what's leading to that and what's causing it, we don't know how to put a fix in place to fix it. So we're really trying to look at instruction all the way back into 8th, 9th, 10th grade, because there's a lot that goes into this test. It's not just your 11th grade year. That's when we see the fruits of their work, but we really need to see what's happening all along the way. CITW, again, just like the middle and elementary school, we're sending our new staff to CITW to focus on objective writing. Our facilitators of school improvement, the co-chairs and myself, continue to work on the school improvement plan. The content-specific PD that we're working on, these are just some of them. We're working on some cybersecurity, marketing, student support network, which is Mrs. Lepek. It's going down with Mrs. May. We've also going on with that, and that's working on providing our students with resources outside of the classroom, more of the social, emotional stuff that our high schoolers are dealing with. The power standard development, our social studies department has been working diligently with a member of the MISD, breaking down and creating power standards for our social studies department. College board AP test training. We want a lot of our students to take the AP test in the spring, so we've also sent some staff down to the AP test training to better implement that. As well as financial aid assistance training, because a lot of our students are going to get into college, and then the big question for the parents more often than the kids is how are you going to pay for that? So encouraging our financial aid training to get done, and then our PSAT training as well. All of these are tied to our school improvement plans to provide a 3-tiered system of support, both educationally and emotionally. Because again, we can talk till we're blue in the face, we can teach our butts off, but we can continue to hammer the data and the content, but unless our students trust us, unless they believe what we're doing is in their best interest, then we're not going to get 100% buy-in from them. So again, all students at Richmond High School will become proficient in evidence-based reading literacy. They'll improve their proficiency in mathematics, as well as become proficient writers. Those are our school improvement goals. And that's kind of a visual representation of the green are things that we want to provide to all our students. And then through our teachers' references, through our counselors, through administrative examination, through kind of a wholesale school effort, we're kind of trying to focus on which students need the more intensive Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. Now to the data. Looking at the NWA language use, the first one here is growth in points. So these are not percentage, these are just points. And it's kind of broken down into different colors, and my eyes are failing me at this young age, so I'm going to grab this. You can see here, the orange is the 10th grade, the 11th, or sorry, the orange, yes, orange is the 10th grade, blue is the 9th grade, and 11th is the gray is the 11th grade. So you can see that at the very bottom is 16 to 17, 17 to 18, and then 18 to 19. At the top, we saw the greatest growth in 10th grade in language growth or language use this year. And then at the bottom is the 18 to 19. And just like I think Mr. Bartels and Mr. Koshin explained also, the star is the goal. And it's very hard to see, hopefully you have one in front of you. They did not meet their goal in 9th grade. We met and exceeded it in 11th grade or 10th grade, and then in 11th grade we're just shy of that as well. And then the senior data is there as well, but we don't put too much stock in the senior data for NWA because unfortunately our seniors have an apathy problem towards the NWA once they get here. Here's our reading. You see there is a significant decrease at the top up there. And that's one of the things that we're looking at right now, is what caused the not only lack of growth in the reading, but the significant decrease there. We've talked to some of the students, a handful of students, but to get a better idea, one of the things we're doing is I'm sending out a survey this next Thursday before we go to break to the students to see why they feel they're not performing well. My personal feeling is, this is my feeling here, there's a couple of different reasons. The math test is given during the math class, the writing test is given during the English class. The reading we put into social studies just so we don't double dip and lose the instructional time in the English class. And so I'm feeling, my perception is because it's in a class and it's not strictly content specific to them, a lack of effort may be missing. The bigger question is, are we missing something in that instruction the year before? Are we missing something in the 9th grade reading or 10th grade reading? So that's something that we need to examine. And then the other bigger question is, how do we get them to put more effort into this test? So they're coming back, they've got that excitement, they know they're taking the PSAT, they know they're taking the SAT, they know they're taking the ACT, and all the other standardized tests. So how do we get them to see the importance of the NWA? And whether that's through offering incentives, whether that's through personal discussions, it needs to happen. And then at the bottom again, you can see, obviously they did not meet the growth because you can't meet the growth when you go backwards. Next one is math, and it's more positive than our other groups here. You can see that there was growth, but they did not meet the expected growth. Other than the 10th grade, they missed it by just about 1/4 of a point there on the 10th grade. And then up at the top, you can see the 3-year trend here from 9th to 10th to 11th. This is where you can see the cohorts. So we'll start with the class of 2021. This is this year's junior class. So if you look at this year's junior class, in 9th grade, you can see the language usage, they're up about 65%, and then they drop down to about 45%, and then a pop back up in 11th grade. So there's kind of that up and down wavering as they go from year to year. And again, we have to examine whether or not that is a step back in the instruction, whether that's a step back in the effort, whether that's a misstep in the curriculum. So those are all things that we have to continue to look at in the high school. This is the class of 2022, so this is this year's sophomore class. And you can see here that there is growth at every level. And then this is the class of 2023, which is this year's freshmen. So we're taking this all the way back to their 8th grade and 9th grade scores. So we had to go back and we had to dig up their 7th and 8th grade scores in the middle school. But again, growth at all levels. The key here is trying to get consistent effort across the board for our students. So looking forward to the future, what we're going to continue to do is to apply knowledge to our SAT prep courses. So we have to take what we know here, we have to look at the gaps in the NWEA, and so we're taking our NWEA data and we're saying they missed this budget, A, B, C, D, whatever it's gonna be, and then we take that, if it's an NWEA reading or writing, we take that to our Mr. Ogilvy, who was our SAT prep English class, and we say, Mr. Ogilvy, what are you seeing when you give these practice tests? When he comes back to me and he says, I'm seeing that they have a solid grasp of this, and that's telling me that the students didn't put the effort. If they tell me, Mr. Ogilvy tells me, they don't have this, then I need to go back and I need to look at, was it not taught? Did the students not understand it? What's the missing gap here in instruction? Our school improvement focus is to continue to develop and implement both academic and non-academic supports for our students. We have meetings at the MISD. We meet at the building level, as well as constant dialogue with the students. Because it's our belief in the high school that we're going to get more from students, and the students telling us what they think, how they feel instruction's going on a day-to-day basis, and whether or not that's through one-on-one conversations or the anonymous survey that's going up next week. We hope we get that data and we can implement it moving forward. Questions, concerns? Yes, ma'am.
Going back to when you talked about the Student Support Network, I'm assuming that's at the ISD?
Correct.
That we're doing that. Now, is that something then we would bring back to work with our school social workers for the social emotional part?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Mrs. Leapack and Mrs. Laratana, now that she's full-time in the high school, are together on a daily basis. I mean, they're almost attached to the hip some days, working back and forth. It's been very nice.
All right, thank you.
What order are those tests given in 10th grade? Like, are they really jammed together, or?
The NWEA?
Yeah.
Okay, so when a 10th grader comes in order, they could potentially have the NWEA within the first couple weeks of school. And so they're going to have 3 of those tests, so they're going to be spread over, try to generally spread them out over a couple weeks, so probably 1 per week. And then potentially within another week, they're going to have that PSAT and NMSQT all together. So they're coming off of summer break and they're getting 1, 2, 3, 4 tests within the first month.
And then the SAT prep course, is that a course that they take? I don't recall, or is it after school?
No, it's a course that they take that we offer at the high school. Yep. Yeah, it's been valuable. I mean, in talking to the 2 instructors and then talking to the kids, at first, the perception was we're not getting much out of this. They don't think that they're learning too much, but then after you sit down and you talk to them and you show them the data, they're like, because it's a hard test. It's supposed to be hard. They feel like they're struggling, and even if they're getting half the, you get half the questions wrong on a normal test, you fail. If you get half the questions wrong in the SAT, you've gotten a pretty good score. So these kids have to understand that, listen, you got 2 questions more right than you did last time. That may not seem like a lot, but translated to the test score, that may be the difference between you getting into a school or not. That might be scholarship money. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have the bond update with Mr. Wellesley.
Okay, just a couple updates. The 5 items under there kind of in general. Talking to President Gillis, I asked that this item now be pretty much a standard item on the agenda going forward, because there's going to be some opportunities that you're going to need a presentation and an approval based on timing. So just a couple things. In your packet, you received, or I received a letter from the state superintendent congratulating us on the passage of our bond. In the last board meeting, you approved the Raymond James as the financial company that will be selling our bonds. So they have now put together the timeline, so that's there just as a reference point for you. The actual bonds look like they're being sold around, the pricing of the bonds is around February 5th is the date that we're going to go to market. So you'll see on Monday the 10th, we'll begin looking at the resolution to ratify those. So this is more of an FYI for you. You also have a distribution, kind of who's who, as we go through this process, from our municipal advisor, PFM, to the bond council, which is through Troon, as well as the underwriter, and then obviously the district is the issuer. So the next 3, the construction manager, architect, and the field trip project and other project timeline. I want to start with the construction manager. I handed out to you a packet at your desk. It was an overview of AWK. The construction manager I'm recommending is AWK Construction, Innovative Planners in Construction. They have done multiple projects. You can see some of the districts that they've worked with, not only in Macomb, but also throughout Oakland as well as the southeast Michigan area. They've done municipal buildings, they've done health services buildings, etc. They have an extensive list. They've received multiple awards and recognition. I personally have worked with Hawkins in a previous district. They cross their T's and dot their I's. They are very good. In talking to some of the references, one of the companies or the school district they're working with is Walled Lake. If you recall, Walled Lake passed the second largest bond in the state of Michigan outside of Detroit Public Schools that went for the several billion several years ago. But they also are dealing with Walled Lake. So their team, what they're looking at doing in the conversation with them is as our projects are ramping up, they are currently working over in New Haven. Their projects are coming down. So the bond team that they have is right in this area. The lead person is right from Port Huron area and so forth. So they're local in terms of being able to come and look at on-site projects as well as monitor them. The architect I'm recommending is French's. French's has done a lot of work for the district. They know our buildings, they know the designs. I think it's in our best interest that they already know what to expect in a lot of our buildings and projects. Both of these companies were involved in the walkthrough, in the PQA that we submitted to the state, and so forth. So what I asked Kirk Carroll here, he is the attorney from Troon that we have had to deal with in the past when on the previous bond. He has worked with me and he's done the brunt of the work in the contract that we need to enter into with the two companies. So I asked Kirk to give an overview of the contracts and that you have in your packet and what the documents basically mean to us. There's a lot of legal jargon and legal terms in there.
Tons of it. Thanks for having me. Good evening. We'll start with the architect agreement. And I'm just going to do a 30,000-foot view here. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. The first page of the first article of the owner-architect agreement, it just describes the project, your major players, your timelines, your budget, the consultants that you're using, the representatives from the school district and from the architect. Much of that information, if you've looked at the agreement, much of it you'll see has been completed, but there are a number of blanks and to be determined items, and that's normal at this stage in a project. What I typically recommend is when that information becomes known, when you know the exact dollar figure and the exact date deadline for substantial completion and final completion, plug it in, and you can either do it in a formal amendment or write it in and put the initials in the date. That's how we, as the project information becomes more known, that's how we traditionally deal with that.
Kirk, can I interrupt?
Sure.
So if we start with the architect, it's the B132 document that's in your folder, as well as, which is items D1 and D2, if you're online. In the packet, the construction manager was first, then the architect, so if you're...
Sorry, Brian, I'm going alphabetically.
That's all right.
That's the way my brain works, I guess. But, all right, Articles 2 and 3, now this really gets into the architect's obligations and services. Article 2 is insurance. And you'll see the amounts that are proposed, which are pretty standard for a project of this size. Article 3, more into the architect's services. Obviously, the big one is design, and what you'll see there are 3 main phases of design. Your schematic design, then design development, then construction documents. They each get a little more detailed as you go along, and then once the construction documents are done, you're ready for bidding. Your architect will help with bidding and construction administration, and all the way through closeout of the project. Everything that's in this agreement is a basic service, and that means that you're getting that service for the fee that's identified in Article 11, which we'll talk about, unless it explicitly says it's an additional service. An additional service would cost more money. That's in Article 4, is additional services are addressed in Article 4. We've added a protection. There's a chart. Go through there and you'll see many of the items on there we've changed to a basic service. We think it's something that should be provided for their fee. For those that are not identified as a basic service or just aren't listed in there, there are potential additional services. And the way that we address that is we don't want to get bills at the end of the project saying, hey, we did extra work, please pay us. There's a fairly rigorous pre-approval process, and if they don't go through that process, they don't get paid. So just keep that in mind when you're dealing with, for budgeting purposes and for purposes of architectural scope for their work. Article 5 talks about the district's duties, which are primarily providing information upon request and providing tests and inspections. Article 6 defines the cost of the work, and probably most importantly, what happens when the estimates exceed your fixed project budget, or what happens when the bids actually come in above your fixed project budget. And in both of those instances, your architect's going to circle back and provide some additional services to get you back on budget, and that'll be at no additional cost to the school district. Article 7 deals with the architect's instruments of service. They call that their design drawings, their documents, specifications. The federal copyright law provides that the architect has a copyright interest in their materials, and that means they can control how they are used and whether they are used. So we've modified that article to make sure that we have an irrevocable right to use those documents, even if this particular architect were to be terminated. Article 8 deals with dispute resolution, which is mediation. We always try to resolve by mediation if we can, and if we can't, we'll go to litigation. Articles 9 and 10, miscellaneous provisions. The big one there is probably termination. You have a 7-day termination. If at any point you're not happy with your architect, 7 days notice, and you can move on. Please talk to me before you do that. There are some pros and cons to doing that. Article 11 is the architect's fee, and you can see it's identified as a lump sum amount. When you take that number plus the reimbursable expenses, which are in Article 11.8, you'll see that that number is exactly what was in the PQ. So it will be no more than that number unless we approve some increase in scope or increased costs. Article 12, many provisions we've added. I've negotiated hundreds of these, 600 or 700 of these, and these are provisions that we've added to be beneficial to the school district, and we've done enough of these with French that we sort of know what they'll agree to, and they agree to virtually everything. So it's a pretty solid contract, particularly in Article 12. But that deals with things like errors and omissions, what happens when your architect does a mistake in your drawings. There's post-construction service obligations for your architects, and just dealing with warranty issues. There's typically a correction period that contractors have an obligation to fix any issues that come up. And so there's some other provisions to help you deal with your AHERA asbestos obligations and Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, and sort of, but most of those should be self-explanatory. One last thing I want to mention in Article 13 is the agreement itself is made up of this document, but also a number of documents that are incorporated by reference, including your, there's a certificate of insurance that's attached, but you also have your project manual and your drawings and specs themselves. We've added a provision dealing with inconsistency and ambiguity that basically says in the event there's any ambiguity, in the event there's any conflict, the provision that applies is the one we like best. And that's something that's been proven is extremely beneficial to the school district. So that's, again, a 30,000-foot view of your architect contract. I'm happy to take questions if you have any, or I can go to the CM review and they'll go a lot faster, I promise.
Can I just ask?
Sure.
When you talk about the section where it says architect mistakes and errors, explain all of that, how that could happen, what does that mean for us in the middle of the project? Something happens where measurements were incorrect, or
well, there's a couple of, it's dealt with in really two different instances. One is if there's a mistake that's found before you go out to bid.
Okay.
Right. It goes out before it goes out to bid, or the fixes it. Right? And we would be responsible for the construction cost related to it. So if there's a designed boiler and they forget to put the boiler in, well, they're going to fix it and put it in the drawings. We don't get a free boiler. Right? We've got to pay for that. So that's how that generally happens prior to going out to bid. After bidding, say for example, an HVAC unit was put in and it was improperly sized. Okay, in that instance, your architect would have to, may have to do some deconstruction and then reconstruction to give you what you should have gotten in the first place. So there's going to be a design issue or a design element and also a construction element that's significantly more expensive for the architect, but that's what's required by the contract. And frankly, that's pretty close to what the law is going to require in any event. That's just the damage that we would have incurred.
I think the closest example of recent we did was, I would say, the middle school gym.
Correct.
When the design was to place the univents one-to-one in that middle school gym, and once everything was done, it sounded like a freight train in there.
Correct.
And so they came back and had to add the ductwork, basically as a muffler, if you will. Easy for terminology. We had to pay for the cost of that, but the design, the architect paid for it and assumed. We didn't pay for that.
You don't get free betterment. So if there's an additional construction that was required, or an additional element required to make that quieter, well, that's something we would have paid for in the beginning if we would have known. Right? So that's how Arizona Missions generally works. Anything else? Okay, the CM agreement, and a little quicker because conceptually it's pretty similar to your architect contract. Article 1, again, is your basic project information. Article 2 is insurance. You'll notice maybe you've noticed a $15 million umbrella policy, so insurance is very good on this project. Article 3 deals with the construction manager's basic services, which again, these are the things that will be provided for the fee that's identified in Article 11, and that's your scheduling, cost estimates, and helping with bidding, bid recommendations. The big one, of course, is construction oversight, project meetings, change orders, the substantial completion, final completion, post-completion, the things that you typically would expect a construction manager to provide. You'll find those primarily in Article 3. Article 4, again, is additional services, the same pre-approval process that we have for the architect contract. Article 5, the district's responsibilities, again, very similar. Article 6, the same with respect to the cost of the work. Article 7 deals with the architect's instruments of services, and then you've got dispute resolution, termination, and miscellaneous. So these kind of pass-throughs. Conceptually, they're the same. Sometimes the language is tweaked a little bit just because we've negotiated with them differently in different entities, but conceptually they're all the same. Article 11 is the construction manager's fee. Now, for your architect contract, you get a lump sum and then a not to exceed for reimbursables. For your CM, they get paid a little bit differently. There's like 3 big buckets of compensation. You have your fee, which is your overhead and profit. Then you have reimbursable expenses. So it could be like your printing costs or your general conditions costs, they're called, or construction support, like your temporary toilets and signage and those sorts of things. All of that will be reimbursed by the school district. So that's sort of the second pot that you'll be paying the CM. And then the third is the largest, and that's the on-site supervision, the on-site labor, that day-to-day oversight of the project. So this particular contract has a CM fee identified as a percentage of the cost of the work, and we talked about this over the last couple of weeks as to what that number should be and what it should include. It's currently 2.9% of the cost of work, and what we typically see is about 2 to 3%. The fee tends to go up for renovation work, because it's a little bit harder project than a new build, and it can tend to go down a little bit the larger the project. So 2 to 3%, and the fee itself is coming in at 2.9, so that's in a good spot. The reimbursables are to be determined. And again, that's not unusual, but there's a blank there. And to protect the district, what we said was, okay, it's to be determined, but you're not going to charge anything until we've determined that number. And so that's a positive development for us. Same for the CM staffing costs. Again, to be determined. And we've worked with them to try to come up with some numbers, and they've been tweaked, and they've significantly come down, frankly, by over $1 million from where we initially discussed. So when that number is known, we'll plug it in, and then it will be a not to exceed amount. Because we have all these moving parts right now, you'll see it's in section 11.1. There is a mention of the PQ app. So here's the percentage, and when you talk about all these different pots of money that will be paid to the CM for their compensation, it won't go over the PQ app. The amount that's in the PQ app. And I suspect it will be a bit lower than that, as it usually is. I think it will be. But we've anticipated that when that number becomes known, about the design development phase is when you have a better idea of your scope of the project and your cost, then you're going to convert it to a lump sum. At least you have the ability to do that. Because then for budgeting purposes, you know what the number is, and that tends to be beneficial. Percentage of the cost of the work, there's an incentive for that cost to go up because the fee is a little higher, so it can be a good idea to have a lump sum. Article 12, again, there's a lot of pro-school district provisions in there, similar to the architect agreement. There's one additional provision I mentioned, and that's the obligation to quote-unquote supervise construction. That's an obligation of the School Building Construction Act. We have to identify a supervisor, and in this instance, it's going to be a construction manager. So.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I do. And I don't know which one of you can answer, but, and I think Brian for this, I asked Brian for this to give us some information about the construction management firm. The last 3 references of West Bloomfield, Clarkston, and Avondale, are they still working on those projects right now, or are they completed?
They're working on one of them, and they can get a big conversation with them too. I'll have to get that to you.
That's okay, if they're working on
They're
one.
still working on one.
Okay. Because our last construction management firm left a whole lot to be desired, so, and my concern with picking, and they came highly recommended as well, which was false advertising, but, and I know they're a big company, but with the idea if whoever we get that is our group that is working on our bond, from the top guy down that's working, that guarantee that, Richmond's project is the focus, I guess. Because we had problems with people that were, and their titles escape me, Brian, the superintendent.
Yeah, on-site superintendent.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So I mean, and I know we can't make guarantees, but what's the reputation? Here, when you called for references, what kind of questions were you asking?
I was asking.
And you're listed as a reference.
Pardon?
And you're listed as a reference as well.
I was calling them to ask, one, their work in terms of on time, on what was scheduled out, how well do they keep, having learned from the last bond that started when I arrived, making sure there's a timeline of work. We have a projected end date of the project rather than dragging out. Every single one that I spoke with said that's one of the key things that they have and do. Returning calls, follows up, making sure if a subcontractor didn't do something, how long have you waited? Little to no issues with that. They have been on the subcontractors or whoever the bid on the project to make sure they were doing the work and the scope in the timeline that was defined.
Did you talk to one of these 3, West Bloomfield, Clarkston, or Avondale, their most recent?
I did not. I spoke mostly in this area. I spoke with New Haven because they're talking, number one, that's the team, not only from an architect firm, but also from a construction firm, because New Haven uses French enough, that they're planning on moving to Richmond if they're ending their project. So I want to see what type of work, how well their district team enjoyed work with them. Very thorough, very detailed. So that was my first group to sit down, and I met with Barb in Sweden, and there were several other members of the school. They also do, and this is something that I'm holding with the board, on their standing meetings over, they invited, almost every district I've talked to invited board members to be part of that, to sit through and hear that conversation, so that if you wanted to know more on the details of kind of the 30,000-foot planning, it's there. They welcome that because they don't want any surprises. The other one I talked to was the Casey Sobchak, who was the former, because when I dealt with him in Warren, Casey, when I worked in Warren, I didn't deal with this part of the organization, so I wanted Casey's perspective on them. And Casey dealt with them before his retirement. Very thorough. It echoed a lot of what Barb had said in New Haven. Another district there called.
And I can jump in. 1.1.11 and 1.1.12 of the agreement, they require the CM to identify a representative and to also identify their staffing plan. And then if you go back into Article 12, which is one of the provisions that we've added, it says we get to decide who it's going to be. If we don't like who it is, you're going to change them, and you're not going to remove them unless there's a death or a discharge or they've been promoted. So we understand, there's some benefits, real benefit to having that consistency, and to also make sure that you're not having, you want the A team or the B team, and you want the folks who are capable of doing the work, not the DEF team. Correct. Right. So those provisions are in here, and they have not been filled out yet because it's a process.
We're not there yet.
Yes, we're not quite there yet, but there are protections in the agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
So the item that's before you is to approve the contract, and there are pieces in that approval that, as Kirk said, we don't have the detailed until we're starting that planning. So it authorizes me to amend that. Anytime there's an amendment, this board would get a copy of that as we find those details or finalize that as we begin rolling out the process.
We're basically approving you the ability to enter into
Correct.
an contract with the two companies.
Any questions for Kurt? So I will go on to the last topic, which is the field trip and other project. Our next phase is to begin to laying out the timeline of all the various projects. One of the things that we had talked about as a collective group, when I say collective group, when I talked with the architect, the PFM, where the money is and when we get the money, and Raymond James, as well as the construction manager, is what is doable in the short run to show to the community of their investment. And then what are the priorities that we have to set up first? So for instance, one of the priorities that we've talked to them about is in the 21-22 school year, we need classrooms at Lee Elementary School. So the next phase is, and we're meeting next, I believe it's the 20, not tomorrow, the next Tuesday, the elementary administrators, myself, with the architect, construction manager, to begin planning the drawings for the elementary school. My intent is to go through and rather work with the experts who know what the scope of the budget is, know what we've budgeted for, and get the baseline drawing. Then begin bringing in the people who actually have to work in the building and utilize the buildings and look at all the logistics from that angle. So the initial phase for the elementary would be with the administration of Lee with the team. Then the next phase would be teachers, secretaries, those that are working in the building, the preschool, wing, etc. The middle school, that's another priority. That safety and security is something we have to do. Those two projects in the timeline of approving it tonight, going through the drawings and that process, getting it out to bid, cannot happen next summer. They can happen during the school year and begin some of that construction outside of the building, but it won't be done by the time school starts next summer. The one project that can be done is the field turf at the high school. And that, from public relation, is the biggest visual that the community can see immediately about what this investment is. Keep in mind, this is going to be a 3-year process that we have to allocate 85%. So it's going to start very quickly. It's just it takes a lot of time to get the drawings, the design, the state of Michigan to sign off on fire permits and all that. So tonight I'm going to show you a couple options of the field turf designs. How this process started was, if you recall, we met with, way back when we started this process regarding the bond, I met with some of the athletics and we talked about what they were looking for if we were going to put everything in the bond. And so from that meeting, Mr. Reinhardt and myself met with the Dale Jerome, the architect, and then representatives from Hawk, as well as Foresight, which is the design consultant, which is in the contract. French uses that part of their basic fees to do the design of the turf. So I'm going to show you a couple drawings. There was some conversations of in this process of let's start. There was kind of go backwards. What right now the group has ruled out. Early on in the bond process, there were some conversations about having blue turf. So we looked at it. This is a rendering of what it would look at this as a committee. And tonight, prior to the board meeting, we met with coaches. Molly Shack was there for the marching band. Football coaches were there. There were people there representing track, and there was people for soccer. So the groups that are using these fields, they sat and gave us their input. They rolled out the blue. This is version 1. We looked at a different one, different end zones, and so forth. Early on in the bond process, there was conversations about some schools have gone to a gray turf, trying to be unique and so forth. Chris, what was the school that has Lapeer? Lapeer went with gray turf, and what we're hearing is they're not happy. Eastern Michigan has gray turf, so we asked them to put a design together about gray turf. And keep in mind, we have a blue track. So these options really have been rolled out. The groups that have looked at this in the initial budget or bond phase, these are ideas thrown out there. Now that they're seeing in paper, the team is not recommending. So now we have two ideas here for field turf, or green. I'm going to start with this one first. This is the high jump, and there currently is this area at this end of the track, but it's not used at all. It's just a vacant space. What this is the grass or the layout in terms of moving the field turf around it, taking that out, and then it adds to practice striping, agility yards here that can be used by multiple sports or even the band in terms of their practice. You'll see in this one, when we talked to the group, they like the alternating stripe, but their recommendation would be to do it in 10-yard increments. What's shown there before you is 5 yards. So if you see in the 50 here, there's a 10-yard. The 40s would be in the light green. The 30s would be in the dark. The 20s would be in the light. The 10 would be in the dark. And then this 0 to 5 would be in the final color. So this was, they prefer the 10 over the 5-yard increment. They like the alternating colors rather than just one solid surface of a field. The yellow lines represent soccer on the field. The blue line, and in this case, the Columbia blue here, Carolina blue. What's it inside? Columbia blue is the team box. The white is the coach's box, And basically the blue is the perimeter of it's basically it has a media line where it allows you can't go that close to the field. So what they're in the design, you see this lettering is in white lettering. The preference of the group is to go with the Columbia blue lettering, outlined in white with the end zones in dark. It still has the same design. The only thing different on this design is we want this to be the green turf. In the R, it would be the Richmond R. The fork, I'm trying to go through someone else, would be a larger or a thicker fork, so it's not so, and as I go in, it's going to take a minute to focus because of the size of the file. The lettering is outlined in a dark, give it a second, it will clear up. It's outlined in a dark, like a black outline that highlights with the numbering pops. There's two things in this project that we have to take care of in the demolition. Number one, the water line that goes under the football field, the baseball field, we'll probably have to bring the water line off the transportation building and run it down there and tie it in. The other thing is the conduit that runs under the football field, just to give you the perspective of, here's the home bleachers. There's a conduit that runs from roughly this light pole to this light pole was damaged, and that's why the visitor side does not have speakers on that side, because we went to run the wiring, which when we realized it was damaged, and at the time it was going to cost $15,000 to $20,000 to repair. So we decided to put the speakers on the home side and face them. You don't really hear it as much on the visitor side, so we want to fix that conduit to be able to put the speakers on the visitor side. So those are two costs that in the project we're going to have to fix, include. But this gives you a schematic of what we're looking at. The process that would unfold is we have a meeting next week, Tuesday. Chris and I, we're trying to gather the input from the coaches, kind of where the board's leaning. To finalize this, we'd like to take this out for bid in January, where we anticipate this coming to the board. Assuming the board still does 2 meetings a month, it would come in the February 10th board packet for review, so that we can get it authorized and then approved, and then begin the project. So we're looking at a summer work with the goal of having it finished prior to first home game. There's conditioned weather, as we learned with the track. That year we put the track in, it was windy. They couldn't install that track surface over a certain wind speed. So there's things that delayed that process, among other things, but that was one of the items. So I don't know if I guess what I'm looking for is from the board's perspective, is there any, this would be the recommendation I would make to you. The scope that would go out to in the bid packet would be the green turf, as it's outlined here, doing the 10-yard increments, and then increasing the pitch fork in the middle with the devil's fork, and then, Chris, am I missing anything else that we talked about?
They talked a little bit about the shadowing of the R, but that's about it.
Yeah, there's some shadowing, so we'll look at the renderings on it. The other thing that we are looking at adding into the bid scope is the MHSAA is looking at adding play clocks as part of the field. So if we had to add them, we would add the one play clock right to the scoreboard. The other one, while it's tore up, we would at least put the conduit in the underground there, so it's there, so they don't have to dig up the turf once it's there. The bid package is, on this particular one, there is a padding that would be listed as an alternative, but most districts use the padding that goes under it. And the life expectancy, there's various levels. Most districts are using the one that's between about 12 years. Some are getting longer life expectancy. So this would be, I guess, the first visual project, but I can probably tell you that as we do the timeline for the others, we're going to start seeing the other ones starting. It's just not going to be done by the school this year, or by the time school starts next year.
So when you bring something in February,
It'll be the
perfect.
final. It'll be the final rendering after we've taken the input. So it would be the 10-yard increment color. So there's a dark, light, dark,
Right.
light, dark. It would have the blue lettering for Richmond Blue Devils. All the markings would be on there that we would need for soccer as well as. There was a request for some type of, because of track at the finish line, they usually put it when they host like regionals or when they go on to regional, there's usually some type of outlets. We want to put that in the bids package that there's some type of plug here that they can put the time clocks plugged into for the track.
Why didn't you like the lighter color?
I was going to say something about.
The question was, why doesn't the schools like the lighter color? Like the,
Why were they
the
disagreeing with the gray?
Gray.
Like, just out of curiosity.
It was hard to look at almost. It made it look black and white. It was difficult to see.
It's interesting because when we talked to the consultant for Foresight, it's a company that was sitting at the table with us. It's a row of white, it's a row of black, a row of white, a row of black, and then when they mix together, you get the gray color. So when you look at that in this particular case, if you look at the white lining, kind of somewhat blends together.
so then we're saying that the Columbia blue, that's our school colors?
The Columbia blue?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're picking it, because we're saying that's what our school colors are? Is that the rationale behind it?
Well, that's the recommendation that that's an accent color that's used with the dark blue. Those are the three colors, red, or excuse me, white, Columbia blue, and navy.
No, I'm just saying, I just find it interesting that that's what we say our school colors are, where our uniforms are all completely different. There's different renderings, so I like that, but I'm just saying, is the stance going to be, so when the question comes, why is that our school
I
colors?
think those
Because
are
you'll have lots of
typically
people
those
saying
three.
that's not our school colors.
Those are the three colors that our teams typically use when they're playing, and whether it's
I don't have a problem with it, I'm just saying, if that's what our stance is gonna be, that's what we have to say, that we're doing. If the question comes, why is it that blue as opposed to a darker blue, or why isn't it white? You know, that's all I'm
I
asking.
think, I would say that our position is, these are the three school colors. From the perspective of our buildings, and when you look at the middle school, it has these three colors
This is
intertwined
what
in
we
it.
liked.
This is what the group liked when they looked at it. They looked at visually, there was, how does it make it a little unique to Richmond?
Yep,
So it didn't, for us.
yep.
We really, we went through it, the alternating colors, because you could just do one, the field of all one color. I think the alternating colors add some contrast and some yeah.
My opinion is that's what the group, the coaches that are involved with, and the teacher with using that field, I don't have any problem with that.
So we met with them this evening, we showed them all of them. This field style with the insert of this color scheme is what was the recommendation. And like I said, as this becomes a standing item, I will begin, as I'm finalizing with the construction, we start doing the timeline of when the construction will start with the elementary, when the construction will start for the middle school, the gym addition at the high school, et cetera. All that will start coming out as we start finalizing and putting that plan together so that we have a substantial amount of it completed in 3 years. That's all I got.
Any other questions for Brian? Okay, thank you. Up next, we have the public comment section of our meeting. If anyone in the audience would like to come up and address the board, this would be the time to do so. It's not a question and answer period. And if you would like a phone call back, please leave your name and number on the sheet of paper up there. Is there anybody who would like to address the board? Okay, up next we have Lexi with the student rep report.
Thank you. At the Lee School, the PTO participated in the Santa Parade last Saturday. I had the opportunity to be in the parade as well, and it was amazing to see all the lights and all the entries that they had, and there was a great turnout, so I'm sure that it was well appreciated that the PTO were able to be in it as well. December 9th through the 13th is the Santa Shop. December 19th, the 3rd grade music concert will be held at the high school auditorium at 6 p.m. And another PBIS assembly will be held December 20th, and this is focusing on respect. And a school-wide sing-along will also be held. Lastly, for the Lee School, they will be hosting a childcare holiday party, and it'll have a pizza lunch, crafts, and cookie decorating, which should be a lot of fun for the students. Moving to the middle school, the 8th grade attended 2 annual field trips. The one was to the Holocaust Museum, and the other to Macomb Community College for their auto steam trip. The 7th and 8th grade band concert will be this Wednesday, the 11th at 7 p.m. And there will be a PTA meeting Monday the 16th at 3:15. There will also be a choir concert Tuesday the 17th at 7 p.m. And on the 18th of December, the 4th grade concert will be at 6:30 p.m. On Thursday, December 19th, the PTA will be holding their dodgeball tournament at 4:30, and I highly encourage people to come to this because it's always really interesting and awesome to watch, yeah. And lastly, for the middle school, Friday, December 20th will be a half day. Moving lastly to the high school, the Thanksgiving break was well appreciated by both the students and the staff. It was a great brain break. And the students who attended the Diversity Summit came together last Friday to discuss potential ways to spread empathy and inclusiveness at RHS. And I really hope that these ideas are accepted soon because they're very important for the high school. Nearly 80 10th graders attended the auto steam trip on the 4th and were exposed to the careers and technology used in the auto industry. So I'm sure that was a great opportunity for them who were looking into going into that career. And lastly, there are band and choir concerts coming up with a band concert on the 11th and a choir concert on the 17th. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. The Santa Shop looks great if anybody hasn't seen it yet. It's really cool. Next up, we have superintendent and legislative update.
And we'll start first with the legislative. They are back in session for a couple days before the holiday break. Preliminary, the budget, the supplemental budgets in respect to what was vetoed by the governor back in September in the House and Senate are very similar. They do restore some of the cuts that were put in place. Per pupil allocation for charter schools and public school academies has been restored in both versions, as well as some of the others that did affect our budget. So we will wait till we're waiting to see what the final budget comes out to be, that they're passed, and then what will go on to the governor and whether or not she will sign those budgets. One of the things that I am most excited about, I mean, there's a lot other than the funding restoring it, but there's a provision in the agreement that the legislature must approve and send a budget to the governor on it before June 1st of the school year, of the year prior. So for those in our area that we have to approve a budget by July 1st, it's a huge move forward because we don't have to wait like we did this year, make assumptions, and then we're a month into school before our budget's actually approved. So that is a positive in terms of just from a planning perspective in how we move forward. We have a lot of great items that have happened in the community. We had several of our students participated on Saturday with the Breakfast with Santa through the Lions Club, which was a great success, and I am extremely proud of the way Richmond was represented there and the way our students interacted with the community. They really did made us proud. As Lexi said, we had the Santa Parade, which we had multiple groups that are students in that parade. We had a bus. I want to thank Ms. Dobbs and Larry at the bus garage who decorated and had some fun. She and I got to ride the bus together, and it was was really a great evening. So behind the Scrooge over, or no, the Grinch, sorry, Mr. Koshin's Grinch outfit that he was wearing. If you haven't seen it, you got to see the pictures.
It's not on Facebook.
And finally, last Thursday there was some tragic news that happened in our district, and I just hope that our community continues to pray for the family, the Johnston family. A third grader was injured, severely injured in a car accident, and his mother who was driving the car perished, and the family is going through a lot right now. The student is making improvements, that has a long way to go, and Mr. Koshin and Ms. Napier have been in contact with the grandmother and as well as other family members, giving us updates on how the student's doing. He has a long road to recover, but if everybody could say a prayer for that family, it's well deserved, and I wish them the best in him a speedy recovery and dealing it through this difficult time with the family, because it is not something that is a very pleasant thing to deal with. But, so if everybody could just say a prayer for the family.
Thank you. Next up, we have any items of interest from the Board of Education.
The day before Thanksgiving break, I attended, Angela was there, and Kyle, the luncheon that was provided to us by the food service, the farm to school luncheon that Mr. Estrada did, and it was outstanding. I don't like cherry pie, but I ate their cherry pie and it was really good. But it was really neat what he's doing, the whole farm to school, farm to table, however you phrase it, but he's doing a really good job, and the ladies that work there with him that made the food and got things set up for us. It's just a great job. It was a nice event.
I had a chance to attend the Satan's Kids Ugly Sweater. Margaret takes a big role in that, so I wanted to thank her for that, but also just all the people that showed up and gave to be able to support our Richmond families. I don't recall what the final total was.
$2,400.
So just wanted to throw out a big thank you to the community and the people who support that great cause.
It's very fun. It's a great event.
I saw some pictures on Facebook of some of the awesome ugly sweaters. I did want to thank all the Santa Shop volunteers. It looks great, and I know they are still looking for volunteers. If anybody can free up even an hour there looking. And I did receive a letter that Board Member Gillis wanted me to read tonight. It makes me sad to read this, but it says, I've had the privilege of being a member of the Board of Education for just over 4 years, and I can honestly say it has been a remarkable experience. During that time, I have had the pleasure of getting to know and being able to work alongside many individuals who are dedicated to ensuring Richmond is a great place to learn and grow. Unfortunately, I feel as though I'm no longer able to offer all that is required to be a productive member of the board, and although I have enjoyed my time as a board member, I will be resigning effective January 6, 2020. I appreciate everyone I have had the pleasure of working with and throughout the last years. Sincerely, President Sarah Gillis. So that will be effective January 6th. Okay, next up we have a closed session to consider a personnel evaluation.
Pursuant to Section 8A of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I motion that the Board of Education go into closed session to consider the periodic personnel evaluation of the superintendent.
Support.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call. Kyle?
Aye.
Margaret?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
Sherry? Aye. Chris?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. We will be coming out after. Up next, we have our action items. First one up is the approval of the overnight course.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the overnight field trip request to Washington, D.C. as outlined in the attached documentation.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the approval of second reading of the board policies.
Motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the attached board policies as presented on November 25th, 2019 for a first reading and December 9th, 2019 for a second reading. Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is approval of the FY 2020 budget amendment number 1.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve fiscal year 2020 budget amendment number 1 as presented on November 25th, 2019 and outlined in the attached documentation.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I will take that back. That's a roll call vote. Okay, so first up we have Chris.
Aye.
Kyle.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Angela.
Aye.
Margaret.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Margaret. Next up is the approval of the emergency operations plan.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the building emergency operations plans as presented in the attached documentation and direct the superintendent or his designee to submit the appropriate documentation to the Michigan Department of Education as required by law. Furthermore, the superintendent or his designee has the authority to make any necessary additions, deletions, or amendments to the EOPs for each building for operational efficiencies and or compliance with the rules and regulations of the state of Michigan.
No, you do not.
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have the approval of the construction manager contract.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the construction manager agreement with Hawkins Construction in substantially the form presented to the board to authorize the superintendent or his designee to negotiate and modify the agreement, subject to legal review as is necessary to finalize it in the best interest of the district and to authorize the superintendent to execute the final agreement on the district's behalf.
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, I'll do a roll call on this one. Sherry?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
Margaret? Angela?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Next up is the approval of the architect contract.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the architect agreement with French and Associates in substantially the form presented to the board to authorize the superintendent and or his designee to negotiate and modify the agreement, subject to legal review as is necessary to finalize it in the best interest of the district, and to authorize the superintendent to execute the final agreement on the district's behalf.
Support. Support.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have the approval of the superintendent's evaluation.
I motion to approve the superintendent's overall evaluation as highly effective, as presented in the attached document, which includes a salary increase.
No. Not on the evaluation.
Pardon me?
No. Oh, the.
They're two separate ones? Oh, I
Correct, yes.
apologize. I amend my motion to take out, which includes a salary increase.
Just restate it.
Just restate it. I'll restate my motion. I motion to approve the superintendent's overall evaluation as highly effective as presented in the attached documentation.
Support.
Okay, I will do a roll call on this one. Chris?
Aye.
Margaret?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
Sherry?
No.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. And our last one tonight is the approval of the 7th Amendment to the superintendent's contract. So every year we do go through and renew his contract, and it will just continue on as a 5-year with the amendment for the 1 year.
Motion to approve the amendment to the superintendent's contract as presented in the attached documentation, which includes a salary increase.
Support.
Any discussion? Did I say that right?
You did?
Okay, thank you. We'll do a roll call. Kyle?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Margaret?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
Sherry? Aye. And I vote aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 10:23.